Welcome to the Published Author Podcast, where we help entrepreneurs learn how to write a book and leverage it to grow their business and make an impact. I'm your host, Josh Steimle. Today, my guest is Dave Chesson, also known as the Kindlepreneur. And if I can just get you to do one thing after listening to this episode, go to kindlepreneur.com and check out everything that Dave's got there, because it's an amazing website full of a ton of resources that I've personally used as I've been through my book writing journeys. So now Dave's an interesting guy. He was a nuclear engineer. He's in the military. He's on submarines. And he's done triathlons, and he speaks Mandarin Chinese. And he's got a bunch of interesting stuff in his background. And he's also the author of 9 books. Is it 9 now, Dave, or is it more than 9 at this point?
Actually, I think it's 10. I just haven't updated that number. Yep.
All right. It's hard to keep track of once you get to that number. Well, anyway, Dave, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me.
All right. So one of the questions I wanted to get out of the way first is I noted in your bio that you have dyslexia, and I'd be curious to learn more about that. How does somebody with dyslexia end up being somebody in the book industry and being an author and running a website about books and reading?
Yeah, actually, if you went back to my English teacher from high school and you told her that I was doing this, her jaw would probably hit the ground. I grew up thinking that I would never be a writer, that I'm not supposed to be. I struggled dramatically with that and reading. I actually have more dysgraphia. So I have a lot of issues in that respect. You never want to watch me write with a pen. It's like nails on a chalkboard for most people. It's like, and so when I grew up, I was like, I'm going to get as far away from writing as possible. And I became a physics major. It was close, probably farther could have been math. But I was only 2 classes away from a double major in math and physics. But the truth of the matter is that it doesn't mean the story, or the desire to write ever leaves you. I kind of just grew up looking down on myself about it and praying for a C in English, and expecting an A+ in, math and science. And that was my lifestyle. So I'm just as shocked as many of you. But the truth of the matter is that I think writing is really, it's kind of like a muscle. You just kind of got to keep working out, and that muscle is going to build and it's going to grow. If you look at the first thing I ever wrote on a blog, it's atrocious. It's embarrassing. It's kind of like they say, if you ever you go to your favorite YouTube video person, go watch their first ever video and you'll be like, oh, okay, I could do this. But it takes all of that time, that sitting down to the keyboard, typing, working on it, reading, and you will grow. And so that's really what I battled with, was constantly poring over the keyboard and bleeding.
Now, in between becoming an author and struggling with this in high school and such, you went into the military, you were on nuclear submarines. How did you end up in this place where you said, I'm going to write a book?
Well, the military, so I got out of submarines and I was a military diplomat. So I did that for a while. That's what got me into the Chinese component of it all. And, becoming fluent in Mandarin Chinese and a master's in East Asia, the Navy decided to send me to Korea, where they don't speak English or Chinese. And you say, well, wait a second, don't they speak? No, English is not a main language there. Matter of fact, I ran into more English speakers in Sri Lanka than I do in Korea. But I was also stationed in a Korean base, not a US base either. So that was fun. But because of that situation, they sent me without my family. So I had to leave without my wife and kids. That really sucked. And my wife had this question one day. She's like, what are you doing this for? Like, are you trying to be an admiral? Are you trying to what? And I'm like, honestly, I don't really have an answer. She's like, well, why don't you figure out a way to come home? And I said, okay. So when you're on the other side of the world and you cannot, I didn't want to leave the military and go do one traveling 9-to-5 job to go to another. So I was like, all right, I need to find an exit plan. And when you're on the other side of the world, you're really limited in what you can do. You can't do advertisements because, my problem was I'd go out on ships for a couple months, South Korean ships to be exact, and can't run an advertisement from a ship without internet. I couldn't do a brick and mortar, a drop ship. I couldn't do there's all these businesses I could not do. So I started getting into blogging a little bit. because you can write on a website whenever you want. And SEO became my main way of helping my writing show up more. And when I started to see that there were a couple thousand people reading something I wrote every month, I was like, holy moly, this is cool. And that really kickstarted it all. And then I got into writing books. I, as a matter of fact, wrote my first book on the Yugogi warship. It's a Aegis class destroyer in the South Korean Navy. And we were patrolling right near the border of North Korea in some crazy times. And here I am typing away at my first book, so it just goes to show you can write a book from anywhere, literally. So that was it. That's how it really got started. And luckily, from my writing alone, I was able to make more money in a month than I was making in the Navy. That gave me the strength to be able to, step out of the military and still be able to support my family and be home full time.
So that first book, was it just, hey, this is what's in front of me, so I'm going to write about it? Or did you have a goal in mind or a purpose?
No, for me, I've always said I've still to this day, I don't think I'm a good enough writer to just be able to sit down and write about anything I want and make it be gold. Like Hemingway could probably write a book about tying your shoes and it would be a masterpiece. Me, not a chance. Well, there could be a chance. Like I said, it's a muscle, right? You got to keep working at it. Maybe by the time I'm 65, I can write that. We'll see. But instead, though, I started to learn hey, or here's a great example. I'd go to a party, military ball, and they would tell me, here's this particular person who has this particular background or so that we need you to go communicate with. Okay. So I would shoot over there, and sure enough, there would be other people shooting over there to listen to the person talking. And here we are just listening and, communicating with them and working with them. And it was because they had the answer, they had the information. And so, when you think about it, you don't have to be the greatest orator in the world, but if you're the one with the answer, you're the life of the party. If everybody wants to learn what it is you have to say, voila, you've done it. So I kind of took that idea with Kindle books, and I started to say, well, let me go ahead and look and use my analytical mind, and all this kind of information to try to figure out what is it that people are searching for on Amazon, and where is there an opportunity where someone like me could write a book and fill that void, that need. And so when I started doing that, I started having some great ideas. Now, this isn't about writing books you don't want to write. Sometimes I had a great idea and I'd find out, ooh, that was a bad idea. Oh, this sounds great. And then you look and you're like, ooh, yeah, no, nobody wants that. Okay. Now it didn't mean I couldn't write the book. I could still write the book. What it does mean though, when you do that kind of research and you find out nobody's searching on Amazon for it, what it means is you can't depend on Amazon to sell it for you. You now have to develop marketing strategies to go find your market and bring them to your Amazon book. I personally didn't like that. So I'd kind of keep doing my research to find out where the opportunities lie. And sometimes I would find a great opportunity, but it's too competitive. So I'd niche down. I would, instead of it be about a particular subject, be a particular subject for a particular type of person. And this allowed me to be number one for that search term and make continuous sales over time. So these were the things that allowed me to really grow, especially in my nonfiction writing. And having written more and more books, I really started to develop a stylized way of teaching inside of books. I have my own kind of little, I call it the sandwich formula that I use in my chapters. And that has allowed me to broaden a little bit and then to compete with bigger books because I am a better writer than I was when I first started.
So tell us about that sandwich method. What's that?
Yeah. So the sandwich method is, I actually got it from reading John C. Maxwell. He does the sandwich method. I just give it a name. He wrote the book on, was that 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership? He didn't reinvent anything. I mean, we've all heard, if you read every one of his so-called laws of leadership, you probably heard it from somewhere else. There was nothing new there. But boy, is that book great. Why? Because man, am I entertained. I'm entertained and learning and feeling good about it. He starts every chapter with some story that pertains to the lesson at hand. Then he gets you hooked on the story, and then he gives you the lesson. And then he finishes up the chapter with the rest of the story, encapsulating the whole purpose of the lesson. And each chapter is fun. I still, to this day, years ago, I haven't even read it the second time. I remember the first chapter, which was on Ray Kroc from McDonald's. And it was talking about the glass half, the potential of a glass. Some people's glass is full at this size. Some people have a bigger glass. It's just natural. And so McDonald's created this great, idea, on how to prepare the burgers, but it took a Ray Kroc to go beyond just 2 stores and make it into the McDonald's we know today. I still remember the story. And so what I found in writing nonfiction is that we learn better in story, we're entertained better in story, and we will always give a 5-star review for information that was entertaining. And so I love that when I set up my books for nonfiction, I will not write the chapter until I find the really good story. It could be personal, it could be made up. I'm clear if it's made up. Or I love finding things in history, some small detail, some really interesting story. One of my favorite, this is crazy, but there was a book and I haven't been able to find, I own it, but I haven't been able to find it on the market, but it was called One Night Stands with American History, which is hilarious because you pick it up and it's this little short, couple paragraphs. So it's like you literally read one a night, before you go to bed. And it's always these crazy little stories, that you're just shocked happen. And I have found so much inspiration in those. So I really search for those kind of stories to put in there that have that shock value and that whoa moment. And when you find that and you start using those sandwiches in each one of your chapters, you really pack a good punch.
Interesting. Yeah, I interviewed a guy years ago who he makes viral videos on YouTube and charges about 750 grand to make one of these videos. So he's been pretty successful with it. And I asked him what his secret was. And he said, you have to have something unexpected. There has to be something unexpected in the video. Otherwise, it's not going to go viral because that's what people want to share is they say, hey, look at this. It's so unexpected. Yeah. It sounds like that's kind of what that book taps into.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's a story that's told multiple times, it's like, meh. And that also goes to speaking too. It goes with a lot of things. When you're communicating with people, we just learn better with story. And we walk away with a better frame of mind and a better feeling about what the interaction that just occurred because of the story itself.
So can you walk us through the rest of your books? After that first one that was about the Navy ship, what were the other 9 books about that you've published?
Oh, I have hit subjects all over the place. I have done things in language learning to, and by the way, the first book was not about the Navy ship. I wrote it on while I was on the Navy ship.
Oh, you just wrote it on the ship. Yeah. What was it about? What was the first one about then?
That was actually from language learning. It was about a particular language learning process. I've also done things in aviation just a whole plethora. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So why did you write, maybe you don't have to go through every single one of the 10 books, but what was your motivation for writing each of these books? What were your goals? What were you trying to accomplish with them?
Well, in truth, back in the day, I was really just trying to build up an author career to be able to get myself out of the military and to be home. And so a lot of that was, and I think that was really important for me, especially in succeeding, because I didn't just sit down to write because I felt like it. I didn't sit down to write because I kind of had this dream of one day being a writer. I wrote because if I wanted to be home with my kids, I needed to make this work. I needed to figure this out. And that kept me punching away at the keyboard long into the hours, no matter what, because I just didn't want to give up. I couldn't. I did not want to let my family down. That was a great motivation to really push through the times where you don't think you can do it. It was a really good motivation to push through the fear of my dyslexia and, I wouldn't say the word trauma per se, but that just stigma that I put on myself because of it. And it was just kind of a major motivating factor that got me through. And so I was always finding ways. I was always trying to learn more. My biggest thing was I studied Amazon. Why did Amazon show that book over mine? Mine's a way better book. What is going on here? And so really trying to figure things out, tweak, test, And that's what really got me into creating Kindlepreneur was I had found all these things that really helped me to get in front of the right shoppers on Amazon. And when I started doing that, I realized nobody was talking about it. Not back then, at least. And so I created kindlepreneur.com as kind of a place to teach about exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And when you do this is what happens. And my goal with every one of the articles is I hope that somebody can read, learn, turn around and be able to take action right then and there and see results. It's a major goal of ours. That's why, like, when I created the Amazon ads course, I actually started by writing an article. And I kept writing and I kept writing and I kept writing. I'm like, the only way somebody's going to be able to read, learn, take action and see results is if I show. So I need to create videos. So then it turned into a course. That's just kind of been my motto. So.
Got it. So when you were now with the books, a lot of people will say, oh, the first book didn't do that well. The second book was okay. The third book is really when I hit it or something like that. Or maybe it's the 10th book for some people. For you, was the first book as successful as you hoped it would be? What allowed you to actually go home and be home? Was it the first book, the second, the third, or at what point were you able to quit your job and say, I'm going to be a full-time author?
Gosh, by the time I hit that point, I was definitely it was the collection of book 5. 1 through 5, because they were all still making money. So every time I made a next book, it was a next step, a next step. My first book was the most successful. I know that's probably rare to say, and I'm going to stress that that's rare. I was a lottery winner in that respect, because I found, an area where a lot of people were searching for it. Nobody was, there was really nothing addressing that type of language learning. So I was like, sweet. But I also had a huge background. I was a major language learner. I grew up in in Canada, and I learned French. I went to a French immersion school. I used to be absolutely fluent in Mandarin Chinese. To this day, I make my, the lady who runs the Chinese restaurant down the road, I make her chuckle because it's close to being good Chinese, my Chinese, but it's not good enough. And she's like, oh. So anyways, and so that book really did well because of the fact that there was a hungry market for it. And that's what really triggered me to start looking. The next book that I did wasn't as successful, but at least it was it's still making money today. And then the third I did better. And by the fourth, even better. And again, it was really a stepping stone for me. And they kept kind of adding up to each other. And then by the fifth, I was hitting my mark. So
were any of your books traditionally published, or were they all self-published?
All self-published, and still to this day. One of the things that I've seen in the publishing market that's really changing is that back when I started self-publishing, publishing companies looked down on self-publishers. They looked at us like, not real authors, can't hack it, blah, blah, blah. However, though, and by the way, I've sat in on, as a consultant to major publishing companies, I've sat in on the meetings where they figure out which authors they now sign or which ones they offer or pursue and which ones they're going to put the money behind that they have signed, all that. I have seen such a shift in their mentality now. What they're doing is they're realizing that why should we take a chance on some no-name author that just submitted their manuscript to us when we can go to Amazon and start looking at these authors that have books that must be good because they've got good reviews so they can write. They have a marketing background. They understand this. They can do a little digging, find out that they have an email list, all that. And now, hey, why not sign him or her instead of the no name that's done nothing? And they're starting to really look at public or self-published authors as free agents, kind of like in sports that, why not look at the free agents when trying to just dig for rookies? And so that's been a really, really big shift. But there comes a point, and I think the publishing companies are realizing this, is that you get to a point as an author where you have your own following, you have your name out there, you have your email list. Why would I sign with you? You're just going to take some 40, 50% of what I'm already getting. You're going to have to really prove to me you're going to make me more money than if I just do it on my own. So what they're really now looking for is they're looking for the, not a rookie, but they haven't made it yet. And hopefully they can find that, that magic right then and there, sign it, and then it, benefit from all of it. So
catch them before they're big.
Exactly. Otherwise they're going to be way harder to land. But yeah, the other thing too is sometimes the publishing companies will play to the hubris. To an extent, every author, even the major successful self-published authors, kind of would love to say they were published, and so sometimes they can get you that way. So be careful, be wise. Think about what you really want before you decide that, guys.
How many books had you written when you started Kindlepreneur?
I had started 3 or 4, maybe. Yeah. Somewhere in there.
And how has Kindlepreneur evolved and grown over time? I mean, it started out as essentially a blog, right?
Yeah, it was a blog. Let's see. I was in Sri Lanka at the time that I was writing on Kindlepreneur, and because I'd transferred over from Korea to Sri Lanka. Like I said, they were sending me everywhere. This time I got to bring my family, which is great, except that my middle daughter got juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And so the military actually kicked my family out because it was too costly to take care of her. They don't have a good medical system in Sri Lanka, so they had to fly back and forth between Singapore. And the U.S. government was like, nope, they can't be here. They're gone. So I had to finish that job without them, which really, really sucked. That was the dead nail right there. I was like, I'm out.
Military life, man, it's tough.
Yep. So anyways, so I was working on Kindlepreneur as much as I could while doing the day job, while still trying to write the book. So believe me, if I could do it, you guys can totally do it. And it was, I had a really good understanding of SEO as well. That's always been a key component. When I'm studying why Amazon chooses one book over another, or, how to understand inside of Amazon what people type and why they're doing what they're doing, that's SEO. But I also know Google SEO. And so that really helped me to grow the content, because like we started off, right? Same with Google. What is it that people want to know? Where are the questions? What are they searching for? Let me write that article, do my best to do a really good job on it, and then couple of things in Google to make it so that Google chooses to show that to people. And so that really helped to kind of, again, step up the number of people that find my work every week.
Cool. So you started Kindlepreneur. How long was it before that started paying some of the bills, and what was the growth trajectory there?
It's funny. It took years before there really was a lot of growth trajectory. But again, it's really kind of the same thing that we talked about, right? It's, we always hear about lottery winners out there, like, oh, I did this one thing, and then and then we all feel like we failed because we weren't lottery winners. And that's just not the truth. That's, truth be told, all of these things, building a business, building an author career, is about a series of failures and just sticking with it. Some people maybe have it sooner and some people don't. It really is, but the people who really stick with it, they get there. And so I really set out not with this idea of, I'm going to stop if this doesn't make me money, or I'm going to stop. Like, I just kept with it, and it kept growing. I figured that it would be better. And here's another thing too, is you don't want to create a product and then go try to find the people to fit the product. In this case, I was going to create the site, find out where, the people who do come, how can I best serve them? And from there is the idea of the product itself, right? So do the research, figure out what people want, and then provide for that. It's kind of the same thing I did with books. And what I was finding at the time was that there were a lot of, I love talking about keywords, and how to rank better in Amazon, how to do that research to figure out what people are typing into Amazon, and, all of that. There was only one software out there at the time that really did a good job with keywords, and its name was Kindle Samurai. And it was really cool. The problem is it only worked on PC, and half the things were broken on it. And the guy who programmed it, great person, by the way, but he was just a programmer who was making lots of programs in different industries and moving on. He was not there to, this wasn't his baby. And so when it broke, he wouldn't fix it. He just dropped the price so that people would stop complaining. And so I was like, man, there's so much you could do with this. If only somebody could create a software that worked on both Mac and PC, did all the things it's supposed to. And by the way, there are a couple things I'd like to change. And that's where I developed the idea of creating KDP Rocket back then it was called KDP Rocket. Now it's called Published Rocket, and basically bottling up all that information and things that I've done in the past to learn what people type into Amazon, how many people type it into Amazon per month, the competition level, how much money books are making. I found phenomenal programmers actually in Sri Lanka while I was there. So that worked out well. And we built the program, and it's just grown dramatically from that point. I would say at that moment when that was there, you know, that would be a huge point for Kindlepreneur, especially from a revenue stream.
And by the way, I bought Publisher Rocket just about 2 months ago, $97, I think. And it was well worth it because, and all I used it for was just to find the right categories for my book.
Yeah.
Because I was like looking around for categories and I'm like, man, you have to really dig to like find these categories. And then I looked at the software. I was like, hey, if this saves me 1 hour, it's worth it. It's worth $97. So I bought it and it was like, oh, this is so much easier. and not only did it give me the keywords for the US site, it gave me the keywords for the British site, and you've got the German site up there. Are you going to be adding other foreign language websites or foreign language versions of Amazon to it in the future?
Yeah, it's just a super long process for us because what we do is we collect data for a very long time on those international markets. And then on top of that, we also like kind of develop agreements with publishing companies in those countries so as to help make sure that our information is as accurate as possible for as long as possible. And then we go through testing. And then once we finally nail that down, we'll release it to the market. And the key thing is that you've got that for life because it's not a subscription. So anytime you go to write your next book, again, it's going to save you more time. And then on top of that too, every time we come out with new features and new upgrades, it's always free for current owners.
Quick break here. Are you an entrepreneur? Do you want to write a book that will help you grow your business? Visit publishedauthor.com, where we have programs to fit every budget, programs that will help you write and publish your book in as little as 90 days, starting at just $39 per month. Or if you're too busy to write your book, we'll interview you and then write and publish your book for you. Don't let the valuable knowledge and experience you have go to waste. Head on over to publishedauthor.com to get the help you need to become a published author. You've already waited long enough. Do it today. Now, back to the show.
So
yeah, it's a great deal. It's awesome. I love that software.
Cool.
So on Kindlepreneur, what is the most popular content?
Well, define popular, like as in the most people that read it or the thing that people are most jazzed about?
Good question. Can you give us an example of one of each?
Sure. The most read article on Kindlepreneur at this time would probably be, I think it's the book title generators, which is weird. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are looking for generators to help come up with a book title. And instead of creating a book generator, what we did was we found all the generators that are out there and broke them out into genre specific or capability specific so that people can find the right one for them. So if you're writing a fantasy novel, you need a fantasy generator, not, a generic one. And if you're writing a nonfiction title, boy, there's some really cool sales copy generators that can spruce it up and give you a shock value of like, whoa, did not see that coming. What is this book? And I think those are really cool. I would say, so that's the most read article. Probably the thing that gets people most jazzed though, isn't so much an article, but a free tool we built, which is the book description generator. And basically it's a WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. Amazon allows authors to use HTML to make their book descriptions different. You can change the size of words, you can change the spacing, you can create bullet point lists, bold, you name it. There's certain limitations that you have, and they have this place on their site where you can figure it out. So I'm like, well, that sucks because nobody likes HTML, not even I. So we created this tool where you can write your book description or copy and paste it into our system, and then you can literally highlight and then click the button to make it look the way you want. But what's really awesome about it is exactly how you see your book description inside of it is exactly how it will look in Amazon. We use the same exact CSS, which is the thing for making the font look exactly the way. So there's no surprises. I've had a couple times where I published a book and I totally forgot to put an end bracket on something, and then half of my book description was all bold. And so it A, helps with mistakes. B, it makes sure that you've got a beautiful looking book description. You've laid it out. We even include symbols and things that you can make it look really cool. And so you can just click the button, copy the code, and paste it in. And that has just been such a big savior for a lot of people. And I think before we created it, somebody had something like it. They were charging $50 for it. So making it free was a pretty snazzy way for people. And so I'd say that's the most popular thing, or the thing that people like the most.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that you found that new authors have about Amazon or about the writing and publishing process over the years of your experience and getting feedback on your content? What keeps coming up?
Well, I think the question that I answer most, or the advice I give the most, is probably the best way to phrase that, is there are hundreds of different ways to market your book. Hundreds. And every day you can find something on the internet that says, I did this one thing and it was the thing. What ends up happening for most authors is you literally start dabbling in everything, and you keep pivoting and pivoting and pivoting. You dabble in this, it doesn't work. So then you pivot over here and you dabble in that, that doesn't work. And all you do is keep going in circles, and you are spinning your wheels and you're getting nowhere, and you're getting frustrated, but you're tired too. I tell authors, choose one or two things and hit it hard and do it great. You'll see a better return on your investment. I know it's coming from a guy who writes articles about strategies and all the strategies out there. I've got an article out there on literally a list of all the book marketing tactics, that are out there, and you can read a blurb, and then you can click a link to go really dig into that tactic even more so. And I tell people, go there, choose two or three, and dig in and never give up. And when you build that skill, it becomes so much easier. Just don't dabble. Just do things right. Do it well. You will see a better return.
Interesting. What are some of the recent developments you've seen with Amazon that are most interesting to you, or that you think are going to be most helpful for self-publishing authors?
That's a good question. Amazon has done a lot of things, and I'm going to take the 20,000 foot view on this and just say, I'm very happy that Amazon is doing things. For those of us, for like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago or so, Amazon didn't do a thing. I remember when their dashboard wouldn't even tell me stuff. Like, it was so archaic. Like, trying to figure out how much money you actually made was like pulling teeth. And they did that for years. It was terrible. And that allowed things like Book Report to be a necessary thing, because somebody else just made an easy dashboard that helps me to understand it. They've improved it. But my goodness, they lived that long. Like, to me, that was the sign that they didn't give a rip, or they weren't going to put the resources into actually doing this right. Then I think when they actually moved CreateSpace into Amazon KDP, so now I could do print books and Kindle books in one dashboard instead of two different things. That was where I started to see them actually start making improvements, or trying. They've just recently they came out with A+ content. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing yet. The data's not out. I can't speak on that. I think that if done wrong, it can hurt you. If done right, it might not help you a lot, but it's not going to hurt you. That's kind of my take on A+.
Explain real quick what A+ content is.
A+ content. So one of the areas on a book sales page on Amazon that authors rarely use, and they should, is called editorial reviews. You should always set up an editorial review. And matter of fact, give me a little bit of time at the end here, and I'm going to talk about my favorite strategy that every author should take, especially nonfiction authors. But we're going to get to that in a second. But editorial review generally is where you can pretty much put anything you want there. At one point, they even very unprofessionally would say in their FAQ that even your mom could leave something in there. They took that down, but I always thought that was the funniest thing I ever found on Amazon. I'm like, wow, okay. So I really mean it. You can put anything in there. But what they decided, though, was they understand that pictures, say 1,000 words. And so you can now design an image of sorts. You can also do certain things in this new section called A+ content, and you can put it there. But what I mean by, it could hurt you if you don't do it right, is you put an unprofessional or, a meh image in there, and people are going to be like, oh, this book looks cool. Oh no. Okay. This is one of those books. Like, nope, not professional. So it could hurt you, but maybe you nail it or you do it right. I don't have enough data to actually say whether or not it will work. But here's the thing though. If Amazon keeps it around, it must be working, because Amazon is all about what makes them more money, and they have the numbers. They can clearly see that a book was doing this, and then when they did that, it did this. So we'll see. They also released Kindle Vella, which is kind of like little small tidbit bite-sized books that you can put out in kind of a series chain. They saw a bunch of companies, actually, there's a whole bunch of companies that were doing this, but they saw it really exploding in Asia. They, instead of buying up one of those companies, because a major Asian conglomerate bought up the biggest one, they built their own. I think right now it sucks. I'm just going to throw that out there because it never caught on in America. Like, the truth be told is it's really hot in Asia. I just did a whole giant research on that to try to figure out, because I was trying to hey, is Vella going to be good or not? My belief, based off of what I found from past success of other companies like this and what Amazon is doing, is until they open it up to the international market, it's probably going to be a dud. And when they open it up to the international market, it'll be interesting. I don't know, but that's what I'm waiting for. And I would say that if you're kind of thinking about it or whatever, wait till they announce an international market. I think that's the best chance of success.
Got it. So you were talking about Amazon ads a little bit earlier. If you had to give one or two top tips for people who are totally new to Amazon ads, have no clue what they're doing, just getting started, what are some of the key tips to getting that started on the right foot?
Well, sticking with it, which goes back to my recommendation is that if you choose Amazon ads, think of it like a skill and stick with it. And, what a lot of people will do is they'll dabble. They'll throw a couple ads up there and be like, oh, it wasn't profitable. And they run off to something else. It's like, you just learned a good lesson, build off of it, And it's true. Ads, you'll start to figure out these little things. You'll start to gain. And my captain used to tell me this, and I love it, is that when you combine knowledge with experience, you gain something called intuition. And intuition is actually what we mean when we say that guy's a master. They have the intuition to know the right answer sooner. Doesn't mean they get the right answer every time. They just know it sooner. And that is what we need to build when we look at these marketing skills. So in Amazon ads, stick with it. Really, it is a great platform. I mean, you're advertising to people who are on the website ready to buy now and buy something. You're just trying to get yourself in front of them first. I actually prefer Amazon ads over Facebook ads, because on Facebook ads, I got to convince somebody to stop watching the cat video, click on my advertisement, leave the platform they were on, come over to Amazon, decide they want to buy now, and then buy my book. That is so many steps. Why not just advertise to the person who's already there ready to buy? Just put your book in front of them. So I do prefer Amazon ads over other advertisement in that respect. But again, it's really going to come down to you taking that time and really learning. And you know what? You're probably going to have some failures in there. But if you really want that skill, that's exactly what it is. Get out there and practice it.
What's one more advanced Amazon ads tip, something that you learned over the years that you were like, oh man, that is a good thing?
I love the capability now to be able to structure my bids for specific areas on a page. So I can say that I really want to be number one for this keyword term, but I'm okay being wherever you put me for this one. That was a really cool differentiator, because now I could say this keyword here has really been raking it in for me. It's obviously worthy of the number one spot. So let's get it up there. Let me at least kind of convince Amazon, hey, Amazon, seriously, I'm really serious about this. Back when they didn't have that, I was like, this keyword's my man. It's doing the thing. Come on, let's bring it up. And then and you would increase the bid and Amazon wouldn't do a thing. It's like, come on, guys, I said increase. But that, on the other hand, does get some action out of them. So I really do like that. I recommend to people really look at what keywords are working for you and then try to find ways to not so much exploit that keyword, but definitely beef it up as much as possible.
What's your philosophy on getting reviews? How important is it to get reviews the first week, the second week, or really quickly after your book launches? Like, how do you go about that, or how do you advise people go about getting reviews?
Yeah, reviews, I hate to say it, but they're so important. They're important for a number of reasons. Number one, the more reviews you have, the easier marketing efforts become, because, like, let's face it, nobody wants to break the seal and be the first person to buy the book that has no stars. Imagine when you go to launch your book, how many people decided not to buy it because nobody had left a review yet. Whereas if the review was just there, they'll feel better about it. There's like a social proof to it. You know, somebody else has tested it for me. Somebody else has verified this is good. So I'm going to go with it. So that's a major component to it. So what I personally like to do, is that, you know, I always try to develop an ARC team, an advanced review copy team. And I will actually publish the book secretly on a day, and then ask for the ARC team to go and leave reviews at that point, as well as, you know, certain fans that I know will do it, you know, just contact them, asking them if they're up for that. And then I will publicly launch the book the next day or two later, so that that gives time for my categories to show up, you know, on the page. It gives time for the reviews to show up. And then when I send out the email or I do all these other marketing events, there's already some reviews. There's already some social proof, and it looks hot from day one.
Cool. What was the next question? I was listening so intently, I forgot what my next question was. This is good stuff. Oh, what's the number that you shoot for reviews? Like, is there a minimum number where you'd say once you get to 10, 20, 30, like that's a good initial number to have?
21. That's my personal one. Like 21's like, you're solid at that point, you know, like it's not questionable. Like, you know, when you have 3 or 4, it's like, but I say 21 because I put the 1 on the end of 20. I never like to be on that specific number. Once I hit 21, I feel good about it and I stop thinking about it, you know? But that's my own personal take. I don't have any data behind that. I just like that number for myself.
Yeah. How much better are verified reviews versus non-verified reviews, really?
So long as the review shows up in the stars and the numbers and they can read it, doesn't matter to me. Matter of fact, I can't remember the last time I was even looking at a review page and noticed whether it said review verified or not. So, as for rankings, from all the data I've seen, it really doesn't change much. So people who say that, well, when you have more reviews, Amazon's going to show you off more. It's a factor is kind of the way I like to say it, but it's not significant. So from that perspective, meh.
Mm-hmm. Now, what are some of the things to not do with reviews? I mean, Amazon has some rules, like you can't pay people to review your book.
You can incentivize. Yep.
Right. Now, how far can you push that? I mean, if you say I'll be your friend if you write me a nice review or something.
You incentivized it. Yeah. There was actually a lot of arguments about whether or not you could do an advanced review copy in return for a review, because technically that violates the belief that, you know, that you're incentivizing, correct? But Amazon's head of personnel or head of VP of something, I can't remember but I remember his name is called Chi Chu, which that's an easier name to remember. But anyways, he literally sent out a memo that, because they had just made a new rule that said you were no longer allowed to give free samples to people in order to get a review. Then they put a caveat on the bottom, which apparently, like, a lot of the authors, because they went nuts about that, they were like, advanced review copies are gone. They didn't read the last paragraph where he's like, however, though, we will continue to honor the age-old tradition of publishers giving advanced review copies of books in return for a review. We just ask that they continue to say that they got an ARC copy, you know, somewhere in their review, so people know that. So anyways, you can still give an advanced review copy of a book, you know, in hopes of a review that they will honor that, giving that, since that is an age-old tradition. But, like, for example, there are some ways where this is a gray area that I kind of like, because it is gray. And I think this helps to kind of give the example of what you're talking, or what we're kind of talking about here. There is a tactic that I do kind of like. I think that if you do it right, it's still clean and it's very effective, but it's so easy to do it wrong. You can set up a giveaway, okay? Like some kind of contest, and there's software that helps you to do this legally, because giving giveaways are like legal
minefield.
pain. Yeah, minefield. Exactly. You're tiptoeing. There's a software that will help you to do this right. Everybody can sign up. Okay. But what you do is you make in order to enter the contest for whatever the prize gift is, it could be an iPad, could be whatever, is that you first need to like sign, put your name and email address, because how am I going to know who the winner is? And then you say, click this link. And the link can be a link that goes straight to your book's review page. All right. This is where it's technically, it depends on what you do next. Because if you say, click this link and leave a review, that means that you've now made the review a part of the incentivization to be in the contest. And that is wrong, according to Amazon. But if you say, click this link, and hey, it doesn't change whether or not you're entered, but while you're there, if you've read the book, please leave a review. That would be awesome. Now you're on the right side of the legal. See what I'm saying? Like how gray that is, right?
Yeah.
You have incentivized sending them to the page, but you have not incentivized them to leave a review. But hey, while you're there, that is extremely effective. But again, it's very close. It depends on the messaging and how clear you are that it's not. But there are so many people who've read our books that like our books that just never took the time just to click the link to go leave that review. And so that's one opportunity to do that. And so some people will even develop that into their autoresponder, especially for people who signed up for the content upgrade of that particular book. And that's a review generator and then some.
Awesome. Some great tips here, Dave. As we wrap things up, you said earlier that you were going to share a tip with us.
Yes.
Let's
so
get to that.
Editorial reviews are really awesome because you can design them. And there's a way to design them to look really good. If you type in editorial reviews in Kindlepreneur into Google, there's an article I have that really expresses what I'm about to say and even shows you the way to design these. But it is so awesome. And it really helps you to sell more by going to people in your genre, in your subject matter, whatever it is, and getting them to leave just a testimony. And if they haven't read your book, it is okay to leave a testimonial on you. Okay. So if you are a subject matter expert, the person could say, yeah, I know Josh is amazing at podcasting, hopefully that your book is on podcasting or something of that magnitude, but they could say that. They might not have read your book, but they could say that about you. So you're probably a good writer on the subject. But what you do though, is that when you put the blurb that they give you, you find a way to translate who they are and why they're important to the book. You see, like, I might not know you, Josh. Like, I might be some random person I'm reading and blah, blah, blah. So if it just says Josh, I'm like, okay. So Josh said it. But then you put a comma in there and you say something that really translates to what the reason why I got Josh to leave that testimonial. And say I wrote a book on podcasting and I'm like, maybe I can find that you're an award winner or something, award-winning podcaster, of the such and such show, right? That speaks volumes. If I'm in, say I'm doing a book on, natural health, if you're able to talk to a doctor, and the doctor gives you a blurb, put the word doctor in there next to the name so they know that this was that. There's just so many ways to do it. In fiction, I know this isn't a fiction group, but to give people an understanding is find other authors in your genre or other writers. You can do this in nonfiction too. And then put in there multi-best-selling author on the area that you're talking about. So clearly an expert on this is having these things. And when you do that, it is like social proof to the max, and you can put what you want in there. And so that's one area where a lot of authors don't do that one simple step. And I really think that has a major effect on whether or not people think that your nonfiction book is legit, whether or not it beats out all the other books that don't do this, and whether it just solidifies you as an authority or somebody worth reading on the subject.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, Dave. So, of course, the place to find you is kindlepreneur.com. Anywhere else that people can connect with you?
No, I think that's it. I've got a contact page on Kindlepreneur. So if there's any questions people had from this or so, they can go there, click, send me a message, and I'll be sure to answer.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Dave, for being with us here today on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to spread the word, please give us a 5-star rating review and tell your friends to subscribe too. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere else you listen to podcasts. And if you're an entrepreneur interested in writing and publishing a nonfiction book to grow your business and make an impact, visit publishedauthor.com for show notes for this podcast and other free resources.